All right, one question that comes up a lot is whether you should chop the blinds in a game that doesn't have a time charge and a game that's raked, which is usually the case at 1-2 or 2-5. And there's a lot of questions in poker that, it depends on the situation and blah, blah, blah. This isn't one of them. You should definitely be chopping the blinds if you can. Uh, the reason is pretty simple, and people's reaction to this can actually be a little bit of a tell, which is interesting if you already understand why you need to chop the blinds. Uh, you need to chop the blinds because you're laying uh, too much money when you're playing a heads up pot in a fully raked ring game with random cards, right? I've played poker in other countries where the rake is 10% with no cap. Okay, most people can see that that game is almost certainly unbeatable. You would never want to play in a game with a 10% uncapped rake, but that's essentially what you're doing if you don't chop the blinds, right? You're playing small pots for the most part. Very rarely are you going to get to the point where you're not paying rake, on the additional money that's coming into the pot, and you're playing with random cards also. So it's not like you might play a heads up pot in a full ring game, uh, but you expect the pot to be bigger because you've both kind of represented a hand. Probably someone raised and someone called, right? So you both have something. So you're kind of hoping the pot gets big and that you win it, right? With these heads up pots, it's just going to be too many small pots where you're paying 10% rake and you put in half the money, right? You don't even have the little cushion where, let's say you raise under the gun and the button calls and everyone else folds. Well, then the blinds are kind of paying your rake for you, right? But if you are the blinds, you don't have that cushion even. So let's say you win a $40 pot, right? Well, you put in $20, they put in 20. The house is going to take four if you're lucky. That's 16 that you're winning. You're going to tip the dealer unless you're a scumbag, and that brings it down to 15. So you're laying, what is that? Four to win three. Well, go somewhere else in the casino and try to find a bet that's bad, and you'll struggle to do it, right? You can go to the sports book. The entire sports book, this whole place is built on people laying 11 to win 10, right? You have to bet $110 to win $100 on the majority of bets, right? And there's a little bit more to it. The sports book is taking a position on things sometimes and blah 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 blah. But that's really what built this entire place. Um, and it's basically an even money proposition, right? You're just picking which side's going to win, and the same is true when you're playing two random cards, right? Against two random cards, you're gonna wind up with the best hand 50% of the time. You might be able to outplay your opponent a little bit, just like you might be able to outsmart a bookie, but to the point where you're betting 20 to win 15, you're gonna outplay them that much? Probably not. In addition to that, most people are more comfortable chopping, and you want your opponents to be comfortable. You want them to have a good time. If you think that being some kind of intimidating alpha dog, poker douche, like this guy, and this guy's probably some famous player. I'm not trying to shit on him or anything. It's just when you encounter someone who doesn't want to chop, very often this is what they look like. If they understand what they're talking about at all, and their logic is usually like, it puts people on tilt, or I can outplay you, or blah blah blah, right? And that's actually a little bit of a tell, because what it means is that they might be a very good poker player. There are certainly people who are dramatically better at poker than I am, who don't like to chop, or have these kinds of attitudes, but they lack gambling sense, right? Anyone who has gambling sense can see right away that you don't want to be laying uh, 5-4 or 4-3 very often when you're in a casino. Those are very bad odds to overcome. And anybody with a bit of, kind of social savvy would understand that you want people to have a fun time and be relaxed when they're playing with you, so that the next time they come in, they don't see you. They're sitting there picking a table, right? And they see you on a table and they think, oh, that's the guy who's like, this belligerent dickhead who's always trying to dominate me and make me feel stupid. I don't want to play with that guy, right? I'm going to go play in this game where people are relaxed and having fun. And somebody who lacks common sense in both of those ways probably lacks it in some other capacities. They're probably somebody who plays by rote more than by feel and intuition. And that's a good thing to know about somebody, right? That they lack that. Think about, sometimes you go on 2+2 or whatever. I don't do it that much, but you hear these stories about these people who are like poker geniuses, and they're losing all their money in the dumbest shit you've ever heard of, right? Like there was something I think at the Bellagio a few years ago, right, where all these guys who were like big time poker players got swindled tossing coins, right? Somebody approached them and said, "Oh, I'll give you a good price on a coin toss, a literal coin toss, right? Come up to my room and we'll toss coins around and we'll see who wins," and they think, well, it's 50-50 and the guy's giving me a good price. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to make a fortune. And they go up there and they get fucked over, of course, right? It's just, we all have blind spots. We all have weaknesses. And some people, that's the kind of mind they have where they just don't sense things like that. And they don't see right away that, you ought to be chopping, especially, and, again, we're always talking about 1, 2, and 2-5 games, right? So it's a good thing to know about them. That they might not have a great feel, they might not have a great card sense, they might not be great at reading people and situations, and they're probably more someone who plays by systems and numbers. And they might still be a great player, but it's good to know that about them anyway, right? Well, then you have the opposite person who probably looks like this, and they're fanatical about chopping, right? I mean, if someone doesn't want to chop with you, even though it's dumb, whatever, it's not the end of the world, right? But some people flip out about it. They get upset. There's even people who love to chop, right? Like when the blinds, when it folds around towards their blinds, they start getting excited because we get to chop. It's like their fucking favorite thing to do, right? And when someone doesn't want to chop with them, they become really upset and indignant about it. Well, that's, usually you could have been able to tell before this, but that's a sign of a weak type player, that they're so afraid of these situations and they're so wed to the idea of being able to get their money back without taking any risk, right? They're someone who's generally going to be a fearful player. And one last word about this. I mean, part of the reason this guy gets pissed off, which is a little bit justifiable when this guy doesn't want to chop, is that I think it's rather obvious that the chopping's negative EV. I mean, there's a reason all these guys who've been around forever, even though this guy might be a losing player, a break-even player, anybody who's been around playing poker for a long time likes to chop, or prefers to chop, rather, right? It's because it is the common sense thing to do. And when you refuse to chop with someone, you're forcing them to make a negative EV play, right? One that's mutually negative EV. They've come to the casino to play a game where they might win, and you're forcing them to play a game they can't win. So it's kind of rude and kind of a dick move, and again, you're just going to alienate people and cost yourself money in the process. So it's a really stupid thing to do. Just chop your blinds like a good boy.